punk revolution. Now, today we're gonna be reviewing one of my favorite artists ever, Danny Brown, his newest album, Quaranta. Quaranta is Italian for 40. So this is clearly sort of a spiritual sequel to Danny Brown's classic sophomore record XXXXXX, obviously being Roman numerals for 30, and also XXX is an inappropriate letter. It seems we got Danny Brown's turning 40 years old. And now we've got a 40, so that's kind of a pretty cool epic thingamajig. I absolutely love Danny Brown, and this is actually Danny Brown's second album that he's released this year. He actually already released Scaring the H Words with JPEG Mafia earlier this year, so Danny Brown is absolutely a legend. Like I said, I love him. I don't think I need to give him too much of an introduction. XXX is one of my favorite albums of all time. It's actually on my list of favorite albums, best albums of all time. Atrocity Exhibition is a classic. What else is there to say? Enough is enough. Let's just get into diving into Quaranta, which is the 40. So let's start by taking a look at the album cover. This album cover perfectly captures what is going on in this album. I think it says everything. It's a sad, dark cover that Danny Brown has also been kind of memeing. Like, he's been posting like variations of memes of this cover. So this is kind of like the classic Danny Brown delivery, where like he'll say something, he'll rap something really sad, but he'll do it in like a goofy, entertaining, fun way. So that's kind of his whole thing. Like, hey, here's an album cover of me looking super depressed. Ha ha ha, but here's like 50 memes I'm gonna kind of cover, kind of distract and disguise my sadness with over-the-top humor. That's Danny Brown continuing to do the same damn thing here, even with the title, Quaranta. Okay, so this is Danny Brown in this album, obviously with the title, coming to the terms with the fact that he is now 40 years old, kind of similar to his album XXX, which is an album where he's partying, he's having a lot of fun throughout that album, but, beneath, on the dark side of that album, in XXX, you can see he's kind of like coping with the fact, like, oh my god, I can't stop partying, but I'm like losing my mind, I'm partying my ass off, and I'm almost 30 years old! And here we have Danny Brown saying, I'm 40. He also has a record called Old, so this is a big topic, an existential crisis sort of topic that Danny Brown is talking a lot about. So 40 is obviously a serious topic, but there we go again with Danny Brown naming the album Quaranta. Why is it Quaranta? Why Italian? I don't know. To me, it just seems like it's sort of like a shitpost sort of form of humor, where Danny Brown is like, I'm 40 years old, but I'm gonna deliver this kind of existential midlife crisis in a sort of memey fashion because we're gonna just pick Italian because it's kind of funny. And I've always loved that about Danny Brown. That's just like such an awesome thing that he's so able to do so well, and I think it's just such a relatable, such a human, authentic thing, because a lot of people who are really, really funny, and a lot of people who are, really goofy, a lot of times they're kind of using that as like a coping mechanism for their sadness, and Danny Brown is clearly someone with a lot of sadness, and is clearly someone who is tremendously funny. But I think with 40 compared to XXX, I'd say with 40, he's kind of putting the sadness first, with like a little bit of humor sprinkled in it. So while XXX was like humor and absurdity and outrageousness on top with sadness underneath, 40 is where Quaranta is we're going to give you the sadness up front. Here's the sad cover, and then we'll sprinkle some funny Michael Scott from The Office, Quaranta voice memo memes or whatever like that, kind of just sprinkle it a little bit. And Danny Brown is someone who has a tremendous amount of sadness in him, and I think, that's what has made his music so good. I don't want to say him being sad makes his music good. That's messed up. But I was just re-listening to Atrocity Exhibition, and it's just such a fun album. And then you hear these lyrics he weaves in about like, I'm probably gonna need to go to rehab. Honestly, guys, it's kind of like you're having so much fun. Like, yay, we're having fun listening to these experimental, fun, crazy samples in Atrocity Exhibition, and then it's literally called Atrocity Exhibition. He's saying he needs to go to rehab. Then he does go to rehab, and you can kind of even hear in his flow throughout this album. Usually throughout Danny Brown's discography, you're used to hearing Danny Brown kind of go like, which is really fun and funny, and it's very clownish and entertaining. But on Quaranta, there's a it sounds a little bit more like he's talking to you with his real voice where it's just like a little bit lower, a little bit slower, a little bit sadder, and it's just kind of interesting. Throughout Quaranta, you're gonna hear it bounce between, like it sounds like he's tapping a little bit into his Atrocity Exhibition era in the song Tantor, where it's a little bit, the sample dun 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 dun, like that weird looping. It's kind of like a dark, dissonant, janky sample that he's kind of, and he's bringing that sort of Atrocity Exhibition classic, hyped up energy. And same with Jen's Terrific Vacation, which is an awesome song about gentrification. That song is so fun. I love that, like the drums in that song. I mean, the beat in that song. It's like, it feels like it's mostly filled up with drums. It sounds like you get like a jazz drummer, like just kind of like improvising, and there's like some like dark synths. I'd say a lot of this album, the production is just like very like jazzy, free jazz with some like darkness and some bassiness kind of filling the space. In Jen's Terrific Vacation, he's bringing that kind of hyped up energy to the table again, and that's a lot of fun. But then there's going to be lots of songs throughout this record like Celibate and Bass Jam, where Danny Brown is going to sound almost like a completely different person, just kind of like singing more from like, rather than like the nasal, like a little bit more like just kind of like bringing it, just kind of getting real with you. And it's really like, it's so nice over like the kind of like trip hop kind of dark beats that come through. And I love also Mike as a fantastic feature that fits fantastically on Celibate. It seems like a lot of the sadness throughout this record is it almost feels like it's like he's spent the past like 10 plus years of his life, especially since he's gotten successful off of XXX, continuing to party, continuing to chase the dream of being a fantastic artist, that he's neglected a lot of important people in his life. He's kind of lost touch a little bit with the things that are important, that are really important to him, his loved ones. Like a little bit of nostalgia, reflecting on like his childhood and his growth growing up in Detroit, but also like just it's a sad nostalgia. It's a sad nostalgia because he's like someone so different than he is now. And it's so interesting because when you listen to XXX and Atrocity Exhibition, it's strange because it sounds like in these albums he knows what's happening to him. Like in XXX, he's aware he's got problems. He's aware he's partying too much. He's aware, and in Atrocity Exhibition, he's aware that he's doing too many drugs. And now in Quaranta, it sounds like he's like out of rehab. This is post-rehab Danny Brown, and he's like reflecting. And yes, he's mature now. He's more honest, more candid. But it seems like the theme of this album is like, damn, I really just like lost a decade of my life. Some other highlights from this album include YBP featuring Bruiser Wolf, which I think is a really interesting song. It's kind of playful. Bruiser Wolf is just such a kind of bubbly, playful voice that is almost a little bit humorous. And you're listening to this song about how hard it is growing up in Detroit. It's life or death. It's all about survival. Really, really dark content matter. But Bruiser Wolf is like boom, 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 boom. He's a real bubbly, fun guy. I really like his voice. Hanami, the penultimate song on this album, is just, it's a really just melancholy, like dun dun dun, just like kind of like dark groove. And Danny Brown again, just kind of singing a little bit like from that lower, sadder part of him, and he's just getting very explicit with, you can't get the time that you've lost back. It's gone. It's pretty sad. Damn. The more I'm talking about, the more I realize it's just like depressing. Like it's an album full of regret and nostalgia. And I feel like the final song, Bass Jam, is just, I think it just really nails the whole thing, because it's just got that doo doo doo, just that groovy, sad melody, just kind of singing. And it's literally about him being like a child, growing up in Detroit, listening to music and feeling so inspired. And again, it's just kind of like looking back, a nostalgic record with just a tinge of sadness that's just kind of always lingering there. And it's really been always lingering throughout Danny Brown's discography. But I feel like at this point, he's saying like, here it is, guys. You could probably tell from my other albums, I've always been a sad guy, but I'm done with the drugs now. And I'm honest with you, I'm a really sad guy. And then he closes off the track, which is really closing off the album because it's the last song on the album, in a classic Danny Brown fashion, which is like, I just dropped this really sad song at the end of a very sad album, and then he just slips in a very little Quaranta, just like a little Quaranta, funny little goofy sample at the end. So it's just classic Danny Brown. Like, even though he's someone who carries a lot of pain with him, he can't help but try to make you laugh. And that's just kind of, and like I said, like with the album cover stuff he's doing, it's just like, this is sadness, but he can't help he's just a sweet, loving guy, clearly with a lot of lot of love and humor and emotion and creativity, and I feel like that this album really continues to capture that. You know, this album is only 34 minutes long, and a lot of the songs here do kind of, in my opinion, kind of come and go. You know, definitely a lot of these songs are like 2.5, 2 minutes and 40 seconds long, you know, less than 3 minutes, and they don't necessarily bring anything super new to the table that we haven't heard from Danny Brown. He is taking a risk by putting that slower, more explicitly sad and mature side of him up front throughout this record, but I don't think that's really enough to make this album, you know, like a home run like XXX and like Atrocity Exhibition and like, you know, Scaring the Hose. Even though it's not my favorite Danny Brown album, it certainly left like a pretty massive impression on me. And this album to me just feels like an interesting statement within his discography without being like a real masterpiece. So I'm gonna give this a 7.3 out of 10. I really love what it is and how it fits in his discography, but I'm not like really blown away by it. I love Danny Brown, I really do. XXX is amazing. The Hybrid is amazing. I think a little underrated. I think very underrated, actually. Everyone, go listen to Danny Brown is what I'm trying to say. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of the review. What? The review. Punk Revolution now.